Hey, Audrey, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today. As a way to get started, why don't you give us some background on yourself?
Hey, Pat, thanks for inviting me today. I really appreciate it. My name is Audrey Lopez. I currently work for Highliner Seafood, which is located in it's a Canadian company out of Toronto, but we have a United States office in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where I'm a director of sales, and I manage a sales team of 6 across 27 states.
Well, I was looking at your profile and I noticed that, yes, you are based in Canada. And so how's that? Is that tough? The business you do, with a Canadian company versus an American company, is that any different or is it pretty much the same?
It's really similar. There are some different things, and believe it or not, their language is like their organization, they're proactive. So there's a few little things as far as like speech, but as far as the business itself, Canadians are very similar into like Americans and what they eat, their lifestyle and so on and so forth. So it's not much different, but our business is very different. In Canada, we're a lot more retail driven, and in the
Right.
United States, our company is more food service driven.
That's right. More food service on that end. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And what got you into sales?
When I was in college, I was a marketing major and I did not want anything to do with sales. So I steered away from any sales classes, didn't want to be a part of that. And I wanted to be in advertising. So my first job out of college was at a marketing advertising agency. And I stayed there about a year. And I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. It wasn't coming into the office each day, having to dress professionally and being told when to take a break. Your 10-minute break, your lunch hour, just the politics and the cattiness of the office. I just realized I didn't like it. So as it turns out, I was looking for another job, and I made a rookie mistake and left my resume and notes in my desk. And after hours, my boss was looking for something and came across it, and then they released me, which was great because it's what I needed in order to find my passion. So I have been part of the grocery business my entire life. I worked at Ralph's Grocery Company and I ran a night grocery crew. And I've been in every aspect of a grocery store with the exception of meat and produce. So I've run every department, been in management. And I said, you know what? I know food. People need to eat. I'm comfortable with food. And so I literally walked up and down the aisles of the grocery store and I looked at like what company I might want to work for. Like I came up with Campbell's Soup, I came up with Del Monte, Nabisco, General Mills, so like really big companies, right? Because they had a diverse portfolio. I didn't know about the ConAgras of the world, but because they have different labels, right? But anyway, so as it turns out, and this was before internet, right? So you didn't log on or whatever. It was all networking differently. So I landed a job with Campbell Soup Company. I was the last person to interview. In fact, they weren't even interviewing. They had somebody in mind, and I squeaked in. And they hired me as a salesperson, and it was one of the best companies I've ever worked for this until this day. It's still one of my favorite companies. Culture was great, product was great. I got promoted 3 times within the company. And I still have the same friends from years and years and years ago. So it was, and they provided great training also.
Yeah, that's always good. It's scary how your similar background in sales or where you got started, pretty much the same thing what I did too. I started in grocery also, and I always loved the grocery industry. And somehow I got into sales, but not the way you did. So did your marketing background help you at all in your sales at all? Can you contribute anything to that at all? Or
It did. Yes. You know what? Now that I look back at it, I didn't know, like when I was going to school, how it would impact my career. But now looking back, I do see where like operations, finance, some marketing really did impact my career. But at the time, I didn't realize it because 19, 20, 21 years old, I wasn't able to apply it in business. Right. And as I was learning, going through it, again, I didn't think that it really was impactful and beneficial. but there are key points where, yes, it did help, and light bulb moments did go on. But it wasn't until I was in my career, and sometimes middle of my career, where I'm like, oh, that's what they meant. So yeah.
Exactly. Because,
Yeah.
marketing and sales does in some aspect, they mirror each other. And I know a lot of salespeople that have gone or started marketing or even been in sales first, went back to marketing and then back to sales. So I think it has a correlation there. When you eventually got into sales, did it come easy to you, or did you have a learning curve?
I'd say it was pretty easy. I'm an extrovert. I like people.
That does help, doesn't it?
It does help, yeah. And I think it's important that you believe in your product and that you feel knowledgeable about your product. And also your company, right? If you believe in your company and their strategy and their culture, you're more willing to be able to engage your customer, right? So it came pretty easy to me.
What came easy to you? Was it just the fact that you had a personality, or you were curious, or did you have empathy? What was the
You know what? You
easiness?
hit the nail right on the head, right? So one, I'm a curious person. Two, I'm pretty disciplined. And I think, you need to have the discipline because you don't have a boss looking over your shoulder. You get up in the morning, and I've worked out of my home office my entire life with the exception of 2 years. So I've
You
always
have to be
been,
disciplined, right? You have to
yeah, you
be.
have to be disciplined, right? And you need to be self-propelled, right? So that's stuff that cannot be taught. That's something I think that you're born with, or that you just that's who you become as you grow up and stuff. So I think that just your own will.
Yeah, you touched on discipline, and I know you have an athletic background to you, and I think that, would you say that had a lot to do with your discipline? Just the fact when you wake up the first, in the morning, you're out working out, or you're doing something to get yourself motivated, right?
You wake up, you make your bed, you go work out, you come home and you go to work, right? And you get dressed up, and for women it's different than men, but we do our hair, we put on our makeup, we dress, like
Right.
we're going to work. So there are times I don't get out of my sweats, but for the most part, I always show up ready to go to work. And I think
Yeah.
that's really key.
What do you think you did in your early days? A lot of times salespeople, when they first start off, they have the energy, they have the excitement, but we don't really have, in our early days, we don't have that experience. What would you have done differently as young Audrey, when getting started in the business where you are today, more seasoned and more experienced, right?
In back at school, you have your marketing classes, you have your operations, you have your finance history, la da 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 da, right? But I wish I would have spent more time in finance class. I struggled in the finance class. I worked graveyards, and I put myself through school by myself, worked graveyards, went to school during the day. So there were a lot of times when I'd leave work and go right to school. And so you're tired.
Right,
and
right.
I didn't really understand how finance would impact my career. And now looking back, I wish I would have been stronger in the financials, the business acumen, especially as a manager, right? It's more
Right.
important now. But again, back then, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
What else would I have done different? Politics. So I've never been one to get into office politics, and I don't really play well in office politics, but I now understand that you don't have to participate 100%. But there are ways in which you can work around and through the politics of every office, right? And that's one of the things I taught my son. My youngest son is an Eagle Scout. And as he was working on his Eagle project, there came some politics. And it was a great experience for him and myself, because again, it shows it's not just in business, right? It's in your everyday life, and you need to work around that. And so you need to be able to manage it. And so it was a great experience for both of us.
Yeah. Even early in life on politics, it
Yeah.
starts very early, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, you talked about Campbell's being one of your great experiences, starting off in that area. So you were an individual contributor there. You started off as a sales rep, account executive, whatever. And then at some point in time, looking at your history, and you have a wide, very extensive history in leadership and sales leadership. How was the transition from individual contributor to sales leader? Because, we're salespeople and we've had accounts, right? We developed those accounts, we nurtured them, we got the business. And then all of a sudden somebody comes to you, and you have that epiphany and they go, hey, we really think we want you to lead a team. It's hard letting go of that, right? Of all those accounts you may have had in the past. How was that
Right.
transition for you? How did you make it?
So, nobody really teaches you how to be a leader, right? You don't go to leadership school and suddenly you've got a team of 4, 5, 6, 10, whatever it might be. And now you're like, oh yeah, I'm a born sales leader, right?
Right.
That's not how it is, right? It's one day you wake up and they're like, hey, we'd like for you to take on this promotion and this responsibility. And some of these people are older than you, have more experience than you, and you need to understand who your cast of characters are, right? And so one of the things that I did was, I'm sure we've all had this when we get to this part of our life where we've had some really good, strong leadership, right? Bosses that we really liked, things that they did well, and things that you like kept in your back of your head, and that you were able to utilize. You also had some really poor bosses, right? Bosses that challenged you because they weren't strong. There was a time where I was sitting in a big, it was when I worked for General Electric, and I'm in this big leadership meeting, right, with all the big dogs, and my boss is sitting across from me, and we're talking, and I literally had to kick him under the table. I'm like kicking him, like, shut up.
Right.
Don't
Right.
say that. Like, what are you doing? And that's when I realized that I could be a leader, that, what, I could do this job. I feel confident and strong, and I have enough experience where I could be a leader. And so I think it's really important that you take every aspect of your career, whether it starts off at McDonald's and you're ringing in customers, all the way up to where I'm at right now. I can honestly say I've taken a piece of every bit of my career along the way to be the leader that I am today.
Right. Right. That's great when you said that about, having, I like to call them the anti-mentors. I mention this all the time in the podcast,
Oh, I like that.
anti-mentors, right?
Yeah.
What you really enjoy about a mentor. And I've had in my organization, in the industry, in the vertical that I work in, there's a lot of different things that I know I have, like you shared, you may wish I have done this earlier in life, may have more finance background to it. I usually pick up a mentor here and there to help me in those areas. And that's what, I know, but I know, the things I don't want to be like. And there are mentors that you go, I don't, I'll maybe pick and choose what I want to learn from this person, but I'll kind of taper to myself. So what do you look for as a mentor when you go to find a mentor, or you want to be a mentor to your sales team? What are they looking for? What are you looking for?
So, unfortunately, I really didn't have a mentor. I wish I did, and I wish I had the courage to ask somebody back then, but I just didn't. And I realized that even now, today, I should ask somebody to mentor, right? To help me navigate, or just somebody to kind of say, hey, I'm thinking of, what do you think, right? Just to have a second thought. But what I'm looking for, like if somebody were to ask me, is they need to be available, right? They need to make sure that they're able to spend the time when that person calls to put something aside, or make some time for that person to listen to what their needs are. They need to be authentic, and not just tell them what they need, what they want to hear, but tell them what they may need to hear. And you need to be open-minded. I think a lot of times, different generations, right, think differently than we do. And we need to be open-minded to listening to what their needs are and their thoughts, because in some cases, they're our future. And the old process doesn't always continue to work. So we need to be open and engaging and listening to what their needs, thoughts, and ideas are.
Yeah. I remember as a sales rep, always when I first got started in this industry, the same thing, just when you hear the boss go, hey, can you come into my office and close the door? I need to talk to you. Nobody wants to hear that, right?
No.
So it's scary. And, it depends on, as a leader, as a sales leader, how that conversation goes. And that's where you have that time to engage with your SDRs, your sales development, reps, or when you have those type of meetings with your account executives or your SDRs. What are they coming to you for? What are they looking for typically?
A lot of times it's direction. It's problem solving. Hey, I've got this situation, don't know how to handle it, or I'm in the middle of the sales process and they're not happy with, say, price. How do I get around it? How do I work? What can I offer them? Or the fact that I just don't like this account. I don't like this person. I'm having a really difficult time trying to connect with a key decision maker. What can I do to change my attitude, my approach? So there's all kinds of different things. And it depends also in your sales team and where they're at in their career, because they can be earlier in their career where they're going to need a lot more coaching and mentoring and guidance versus people that have been around the block for a while. Sometimes they need even a little bit of refreshing, right? Some new approaches, new thoughts, new ideas.
Yeah. And as a sales leader, you will be put into all these different types of scenarios, right? So you have to know how to answer all those. I'm gonna assume that your space is a difficult one to be in, and it just the industry also as it was today with the supply chain going on. How do you differentiate yourself from your competition? And what I mean by that is that today's atmosphere where the customer wants to put you into that commodity, they want to commoditize you as a salesperson, right? I'm in the vertical where we have a lot of different products. Customers can buy them from anywhere they want. So they kind of put us in that commodity trap. How do you try to avoid or advise your salespeople not to fall into that commodity trap? What do you do?
Right. As you know, seafood is very commodity driven too, right? So it's very much like what you're doing. Again, I think, especially over the last 2 years with all the supply chain problems, we need to be a problem solver, right? So we need to really find out what their true problem is, right? Is it price? The last few years, not so much, right? It's been more about, can you get me this product? Can I deliver to my customer, the end user? So I think it's really important to be authentic, to find out what their pain points are, and to really we work for a company, but when we work with a customer, it's almost like you're working for that customer, right? You become a partner with your key decision maker and say, hey, how can we band together? What can we do together to make this work best for you, right? So is it a labor savings item? Is it a cost savings item? Do we need to move from a different species because one is higher priced than another? How can we be creative with recipes? Instead of using 4 different ingredients, how can we use maybe one seafood product to give you 5 different options? So it's a little bit about, again, working and thinking, and I hate to use the outside the box, but you need to be more creative and empathetic to what their needs are. And I think once they understand that you truly are engaged in their business and you want to help them, they're willing to, maybe spend an extra dime or whatever, a pound versus somebody else's product.
Yeah.
And follow up. So many times people come knocking on the doors, hey, I need a favor, I need a sale, but then they don't follow up, right? So they're not really in it for they're in it for themselves rather than for the long haul.
Yeah. And being empathetic, being curious, and also, having an open mind, listening. A lot of times we as salespeople fall into the trap of not wanting to listen to the customer. We have all this stuff we want to sell because we sell stuff, right? You sell fish, I sell packaging. We love to talk.
Yeah.
And we sometimes, it was funny, I had a couple of podcasts before, somebody had mentioned, a lot of times salespeople like to show up and throw up, right? We all heard that trope before. We dance out all these little tropes on the way, but it's true, because we got so much that we want to sell. And what happens when we show up and throw up, our customers will immediately go, oh, here we go again,
Yeah.
and I'm going to
Right.
put you back into that commodity trap. And so we have to avoid that, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Early on when you were selling, did you have a process? And do you talk to this about your sales team right now? Some type of process. We all have to be, especially sales leaders, we have to be very judicious with our time. So we want to make sure we're not wasting time and, getting to the root of the problem with our salespeople and our customers. Did you ever have a plan? Did you, when you executed that plan, did you evaluate yourself after? Or did you have any talks with yourself? We all do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we do. You got to plan to work and work the plan, right?
Right.
That's my little thing. And my team knows this. They're like, I know you got to plan to work and work the plan. And what does that mean is that before you go and see any customer, right? They get all excited. Oh yeah, so-and-so's growing, we're going to add 6 new units next year and we need to go after them and stuff. And I'm like, have you looked at their menu? What are they missing? How can you help them? Have you looked at their prices? Are they working with, a group purchasing organization or a consultant? You need to do your research. You can't just go out there haphazard and say, hey, by the way, we're Highliner. We've been around for 120 years. We got a great portfolio. What do you want to buy from us? That's not how we do it, right?
Right.
You need to make sure that you have your ducks in a row. You need to know who they're currently using or if they're using anybody. That I think is really, really the most important thing. You also need to understand, maybe you go in and have lunch there or dinner there, try their current product or get to know maybe some of their leadership team, right? Their management team. What is it that they're looking for? What are their pain points? So that when you go back to a key decision maker, you can say, hey, I've been to 2 of your locations and here's what I'm hearing from your sales team. They don't like the product and here's why. I can help you with, or, we don't have seafood on the menu. How can we bring this in and here's some data analytics to show you what kind of increase, what kind of ROI you can get. So it's all that kind of stuff. If you don't plan that ahead of time, don't show up. Don't waste their time. Don't waste your time.
Right. Right. And in your industry, where is the entry point for your sales reps or even yourself as a sales leader? Is it usually with somebody in category management, or is it in the C-suite level? The CEOs, the CFIs?
Yeah, it depends. Again, we have our regional sales team, and then we also have brokers. There's so many different segments within food service, as you know, right? So there's the independent restaurant operator that has the mom and pop. There's the small unit regional chains that are just developing, and maybe they have 1 store and they graduate to 3 stores, 5 stores, and then they expand, beyond the footprint of maybe even a state. And then you have the big chains. You have non-com accounts like college and university. You have healthcare, assisted livings, hospitals, prisons, K-12. There's so many different places in food service that you can sell. So it depends on where you're selling. But you know what? When you walk into any sale, it could start right there with the receptionist.
Right.
If there is one anymore, right?
Yeah.
They're far between. But it can also start with, it can be anybody, right? Everybody that you connect with or touch could make an impact. Or you may see them in a different capacity down the road. It might be 5 years, 10 years. Oh yeah, I remember you. You were at, wherever, and now you're over here and you're a key decision maker. So I think it's really important to make a good first impression, and assume that everybody you're making contact with could be a part of the decision, because you just don't know, especially if it's like a family, right? I walked in recently, I was in Chicago in November, and it was a family-run business, and the guy that said hello to us was the grandson of the owner, who's been around for forever and ever. They had paneling on the walls, and it was kind of a hall type thing where they have seafood fests and so on, and banquets and everything. And he was the key decision maker. I didn't know that when we walked in, with my rep, and neither did my rep, right? And this guy was kind of dressed in, sweats. He just didn't look the part, right? Well, it was his day off. He went in to take care of some of the, like decorating and everything. You just don't know.
You don't know. You have to be prepared at all times, right? Because the decision maker can be anybody along that set there. So you have to make sure that you're, knowing everybody or touching everybody in that company, right? In the organization.
Typically, though, it's buyers, category managers that we try and meet with so that they can make, whatever decision we need to. But that's typically who we try and meet up with.
Yeah. And I think early on with a lot of the newer reps or just, reps that are in the business for a few years, they don't comprehend yet, or they don't understand that everybody in that organization is a touch point. So you need, if you really want to get in a preferred position with a customer where, you know as much about their business as they do, then they're going to recognize that you're touching everybody in that organization and seeing it, because that's where your opportunities are. We call areas of opportunity for us. So we want to do that.
And, as you get into the larger accounts, the larger, let's just say distributors, there are a lot of touch points, right? There's category managers for refrigeration and seafood and meat and dry grocery and so on and so forth. Those two, all of those go together, right? And they could all switch and stuff, but it's important, I think, that you work with the marketing manager, that you work with vice president of sales, vice president of operations, that those people, the presidents, and so on. So I think it's important that you say, hey, introduce me. Not every time, but hey, could you please introduce me to your boss? Or could you please introduce me to the category manager, so that you have a name and you have a relationship? Because when you see people face to face, it's so much different than over a phone, right? And if you need a quick favor, you can say, hey, remember I saw you? And remember we talked about your son was an Eagle Scout, and my son was an Eagle Scout, and whatever, right? So I think it's important that you network both up and down.
Yeah, and that's a critical portion of growing in sales and being a good, successful salesperson. I know you hire employees and so on. What do you look for? What's the ingredients that you like to see in a solid salesperson?
I totally love that question. A salesperson needs to be curious. That's first, I think. They need to be passionate, self-motivated and disciplined. I kind of talked about that. And they need to have a high degree of integrity. I really, and my team knows, I think almost every one of them have tried to pass a white lie or something by me. And I feel like a mom. I am a mom, but I catch it, right? And then they're like, oh my God. Or they'll fall on their own sword and go, you know what, I totally lied to you, right? But I think integrity is really important, especially with your customers. If you don't know the answer, it's okay. I don't know the answer. Let me get back to you. You can say, I think, but you're assuming and think may not be correct. So it's really important, I think, to have that. I think if you mix in a little bit of grit, stamina, and a positive attitude, I think that really makes a really good salesperson. And I can teach you about product. I can teach you how to build programs and promotions. I can teach you how to look back and do post-analysis. What I can't teach you is to have the passion and to be curious and having the desire. That has to come from within.
Yeah, that is something that they have to learn. You have to learn. You have to remember it every day that you wake up. These are things that are very important, not only to you, but also the customer, because the customers will pick you off if you're not, if you're disingenuous with them, or you're not, you don't have any integrity with them, they'll pick you off. We just got out of a 3-year nightmare with the whole pandemic COVID thing. If you had learned one thing about that, what was your takeaway?
To be flexible. That was probably the biggest thing. Our world changed upside down, right? And as a leader, I did not want my sales team to be laid off, right, during that time period. So it was important for me to be able to what can I do to find work for them so that they can stay on the payroll? How can I keep them engaged? Because people aren't going out to eat at restaurants. They're not going to the movies. They're not going to school. They're not, the one thing we had was hospitals, prisons.
Yeah.
So,
lots of prisons.
And nobody wanted to make any decisions, right? They're just going to stay with what they have, give us whatever you have, and we're just going to keep eating because we don't have time to make decisions. We don't have time for contracts. We don't have time for any of that. And we don't want to see you. So we had to switch, of course, like everybody, to Zoom calls, WebEx calls. But what I did was I said, you know what, now is a great time for training. So I devised this entire training program. And I made it fun. I kind of did it like a Where's Waldo kind of thing.
Right.
Made it fun for them. They had to take little tests, but they won gifts and stuff. Our broker teams won gifts, small little things, $10 gift cards to Starbucks, whatever it might be. But that's the time where I'm like, hey, we need to think how we can engage and what we can do during this downtime. So the other thing is, again, you know, we learned that the customer doesn't have to have a certain manufacturer, a certain size, a certain species. They can be flexible. They can have a fish taco with tilapia. It doesn't have to be cod.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So flexibility not only on your end as a sales leader and your sales reps, but also the customer had learned also to be very flexible.
Yeah, they were a lot more accommodating, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great
and we
conversation.
became real with each other, right? Because we shared it, like we didn't have the backgrounds where we can either blur them out.
Yeah.
You know, we showed the kitchen table. We showed the kids coming in. We had the dog pop up, the cat walk across the street. We all became real people, right? Because we're working in our homes. And I think once people realize that, oh, you know what? We're all in this together. People became kinder to each other and more easygoing, able to make, you know, it wasn't such hard decisions. It was softer decisions. You know, it was easier to do business, I think, because people were kinder.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great time for us to be, like you say, more flexible, get to know each other, get to know the customer more in depth. So that's an important thing.
Yeah, you're in their kitchen, right?
You're in their kitchen. Hey, I appreciate your time today. Great conversation. How do people, where do they go to connect or reach out to you?
Pat, can be reached on LinkedIn. Audrey Lopez in LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time.